Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable silence makes most people? A conversation pauses for just a few seconds, and someone rushes to fill it. They laugh, they talk faster, they grab their phone. But then there's that one person who doesn't move. They sit there calmly, saying nothing, and somehow the silence feels heavier around them. That's not an accident. That's psychology. Today, we're breaking down the psychology of people who are comfortable being silent. Not quiet because they're insecure. Quiet because they don't need noise to feel whole. Let's start with something important. Silence is not neutral. Silence exposes what's inside you. For many people, silence triggers anxiety because when the noise stops, the mind gets louder. Thoughts surface, doubts appear. So people talk to escape themselves. But the people who are comfortable being silent, they've already made peace with what's inside. They don't depend on external validation. Psychology shows that many conversations are driven by one hidden need: approval. People talk to be liked, to be noticed, to feel relevant. Those comfortable with silence don't feel that pressure. Their sense of self-worth doesn't rise or fall based on how others react to them. This is known as internal validation. They don't need to constantly signal intelligence, humor, or confidence through words. So silence doesn't feel like a threat. It feels natural. When there's nothing to prove, there's nothing to say just for the sake of saying it. They have high self-awareness. Silence forces you inward, and most people don't like what they hear when they look inward. That's why distractions are everywhere. People who are comfortable being silent have learned to sit with their thoughts without panicking. They can observe emotions without reacting instantly. This is a core part of emotional intelligence. They don't confuse thoughts with commands. They don't need to immediately escape discomfort. So silence becomes a space for clarity instead of anxiety. Psychologically, this means they're less reactive and more regulated. They're not afraid of pauses because pauses don't control them. They think before they speak. There are two main thinking styles in psychology: reactive processing and reflective processing. Reactive thinkers speak as thoughts appear. Reflective thinkers pause, filter, then speak. People comfortable with silence usually fall into the second category. They don't rush to respond. They don't interrupt. They don't talk just to stay relevant. They let moments breathe. That's why when they finally speak, people listen. Their words feel heavier, more intentional. Silence becomes part of their communication style. Not a lack of communication, but a tool. They aren't controlled by social pressure. There's an unspoken social rule that silence is awkward, and most people are terrified of breaking social rules. So they overcompensate, they over-explain, they overshare. People who are comfortable being silent don't feel responsible for managing the room's emotions. They don't feel guilty when conversations slow down. They don't rush to entertain. Psychology links this to emotional independence. They allow situations to unfold naturally without forcing them. They don't confuse silence with failure. They see it as neutral, and that gives them a quiet kind of power. They're present, not performing. Many conversations are performances. People curate reactions. They craft responses. They manage impressions. People who are comfortable being silent don't live in performance mode. They're not constantly thinking about how they're coming across. They're actually there. Psychology calls this grounded presence. Their attention is anchored in the moment, not in how the moment looks. They don't narrate life. They experience it. That's why their silence feels different. It's full, not empty. They're comfortable with uncertainty. Silence often means not knowing what comes next, and uncertainty scares people. People rush to speak because silence feels like loss of control. But those comfortable with silence don't need to control every moment. They can sit in not knowing. They don't panic when things aren't clearly defined. This shows psychological flexibility. They adapt instead of forcing outcomes. They trust that meaning will emerge without being rushed. They don't confuse quiet with weakness. In many cultures, loudness is mistaken for confidence. But psychology shows confidence doesn't need volume. People comfortable with silence know who they are. They don't need to dominate conversations to feel strong. They don't equate attention with worth. Their calm isn't emptiness. It's certainty. They understand that silence doesn't reduce their presence. It amplifies it. They conserve mental energy. Talking constantly is mentally expensive. Decision-making, impression management, emotional regulation. People comfortable with silence don't waste energy filling space. They speak when it matters. They rest when it doesn't. Psychologically, this leads to better focus and lower mental fatigue. They're selective with their output, and that selectivity is often mistaken for mystery. They've learned that not everything needs a response. Many people feel compelled to respond to everything, every comment, every opinion, every silence. But people comfortable with silence understand something important. Not everything deserves your energy. They don't rush to explain themselves. They don't argue unnecessarily. They don't defend every boundary. This shows strong self-regulation and emotional maturity. Sometimes silence is the response. They're not afraid of being misunderstood. Talking is often a way to control how others see us. Silence removes that control. People comfortable being silent accept that not everyone will understand them, and they're okay with that. Psychology links this to identity stability. They don't need constant clarification to feel secure in who they are. They let actions speak. They let time reveal meaning. Now here's the part most people miss. Being comfortable with silence doesn't mean you're antisocial. It doesn't mean you lack social skills. And it doesn't mean you're emotionally distant. In many cases, it means the opposite. It means you're emotionally regulated, self-aware, and internally grounded. Silence is only scary when you're avoiding yourself. So next time a conversation goes quiet, notice what happens inside you. Do you feel the urge to escape, to fill the space, to prove something? Or can you sit there calmly, present, unbothered? Because in psychology, the people most comfortable with silence often hear the most. They observe more, they think deeper, and they speak with intention. If this made you feel understood, you're not alone. There's more psychology hiding in everyday behaviors than most people realize. Subscribe and keep exploring how the mind really works.